with me, we have my co-host, Peter Allison.
Good evening, everyone.
And with us tonight, our special guest, George from 3 Sales Studios.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
And thank you very much. We're discording it today because we're doing things differently. So, George, who are you? What do you do? What's your thing?
Wow, God, those are big questions. Who am I? So I'm George. My name's George Francis Bickers. I am the studio lead and lead designer at 3 Sales Studios, which is a very small indie TTRPG design studio and publisher based here in surprisingly sunny Manchester today.
Oh, you're a Manchester boy.
I'm Manchester boy, yeah. Well, I'm not actually. I'm an Essex boy, and people from Essex would kill me if I didn't fess up to that. I've been in Manchester a good long time now. I've been here since 2016. I came up here to do my PhD at University of Manchester. Yeah, I know, Doctor George Francis Bickers. Yeah, wow. That's to use the official title, which I never use. So. But yeah, so I'm the studio lead at 3 Sales Studios. I am the lead designer for Mappa Mundi, an exploration and ecology RPG, which you can see the pre-release copy of there, or pre-release guide for there. And that's kind of my thing, really. That's at the moment, that's kind of my jam. I'm running the studio, holding down a full-time job and a freelance job alongside it to keep everything ticking along. But yeah, that's really quickly. That's me.
Wow, there's a lot to unwrap right there.
Unwrap me, boys. I'm ready to be unwrapped.
No, Pete, I was asking first.
Actually, my first question is like, you're managing a studio. You have a full-time job.
Yes.
And you freelance as well.
Yes.
When do you sleep?
I sleep, but by the end of each day, I am knackered, and so I sleep surprisingly well. So I sleep, I get my 8 hours in. I used to be a 10-hour sleep kind of guy. I'm like, I need my 8 hours. I'm lucky. I'm privileged in the sense that I don't have any kids, and I'm not planning on having any. I have a dog who takes up significant space in the bed, but that's. He's a beagle. His name's Buddy. He's 10 and a half. He's nearly 11, actually. He'll be 11 next month.
Wow.
We rescued him when he was 5, and he was the size of 2 beagles because he was a big, chunky boy. But now he's a skinny legend now, and he's back to his healthy weight, which is really good. But yeah, no, I sleep. I find my time for sleep. I prioritize my sleep. Luckily, I have a really good team. I have a very small but very considerate and caring team around me who make sure I'm not burning out and keeping myself going.
Nice.
So, with regards to the degree, I've just got 2 questions. In a doctor, do you ever sort of throw that in and somebody's like, calls you Mister, and you go, "Oh, it's actually Doctor."
I've only ever done that like twice. Someone was being how are we with the blue language on the stream?
Oh yeah, fire away, man. Yeah,
excellent, good, because you can take the boy out of Essex, but you can't take the Essex out of the boy. One time, I was trying to deal with an insurance renewal thing, and the person on the phone was being really shitty with me. And then said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Bickers," and I was like, "Actually, it's Dr. Bickers." And that's the only time I've ever done it, because the person was being shitty with me. So I was like, "I'm gonna be a little bit shitty back."
I think that's the only time you would use that, wouldn't you? Go, "It's actually Doctor," just like beat down.
I didn't go to 3 years of evil PhD school to call Mr. Thank you very much. To throw in an old reference there.
What's your PhD in?
My PhD is in American Studies. So my undergrad was in English. My master's was this interdisciplinary mess. And then my PhD is in American Studies. So I am an anarchist spatial theorist. So I looked at, my PhD was about radical social movements in the US, in Los Angeles and New York in the 1960s and 1970s. And I looked at how they physically occupied space as an anti-state activity, but then how they wrote about space as a means of continuing anti-state contestation. I promise you it's more exciting than it sounds.
It sounds exciting as it is, man.
That's right. So, I mean, when you talk about those kind of anti-state groups, are you talking about gangs like the Bloods and the Crips?
No, well, I mean, actually, they did the LA, what became the kind of South Central LA gang culture did somewhat feature into the kind of tail end of the PhD. But actually, I was looking at I had a chapter on the Black Panthers and Black nationalism a little bit more broadly. I had a chapter on the underground press and the student movement, particularly the occupation of Columbia University in New York. I had a chapter on the women's liberation movement, and then I had a chapter on the gay liberation front, but particularly the kind of more underground, more radical aspects of that, and a lot of kind of early trans activism as well.
So,
Nice.
Yeah, well, that sounds amazing. Like, how
Thanks.
did you sort of? Was it just? Did you have a job in mind? What doing that, or is it just something you you were really sort of drawn to and something you wanted to do?
It's a weird one, really. So I mean, like, so I was I was 21. I'd been living on my own for a number of years at that point, and I used to be in a band. I signed a record deal when I was 16, like a really minor indie thing.
Wow.
I'm a man of many lives, and this is you're unwrapping me quick here. But yeah, so
Wow.
I signed this indie like a shitty indie record deal when I was 16. And by the time I was 19, I was like, I'm done with this now. I want to go to university. But I'd never stepped foot on a university before. I didn't know anyone that had been to university anymore. I come from a really working class background in Essex. And I did an access to higher education course because I didn't have any A levels. And to put into perspective how alien university was as a concept for me, I didn't know when I was applying whether I was supposed to be applying for an undergraduate degree or a postgraduate degree because I didn't know what the words meant. And retrospectively, I probably could have worked it out, but at the time, I genuinely had no idea. And then at 21, I went to uni and I studied English. And I'd kind of gone because I wanted to be a teacher. And then I worked, the year before I went to uni, I worked in a secondary school in the town across from me as a special educational needs teaching assistant and an English as an additional language tutor. And I had to sit one A level, and I was sitting my English A level in 1 year with the students I was helping teach. Which was a bit awkward, kind of queuing up in like doing them revision classes the night before and then standing in the exam line with them the next morning was a bit strange. But so I did that, and I wanted to be a teacher, and then I realized that I have huge mad respect for teachers, but I couldn't deal with the repetition of that kind of teaching. And then when I got to university, I was like, oh, I want to do what the lecturers are doing. I had no idea what a PhD was. I didn't know you had to have one, but obviously over time I kind of came to know that was what you needed to do. And that was my plan. My plan was to be a lecturer, and I got to do that part-time, kind of on fractional contracts. I was teaching all the way through my PhD. I taught for kind of 2 years after my PhD here in Manchester. But unfortunately, the academic job market is, how do you say this delicately? It's fucked. It's a horrible, awful, grind. There's nowhere near enough jobs, and the jobs that are there are really, really low quality. And so both me and my partner were gearing up to become lecturers, and both of us left. And I'm doing the studio, and I'm kind of working kind of full time alongside the studio to make sure I can pay my bills. And then I freelance to make sure Joel, our artist, gets paid something. And yeah, that's what's brought me to this point, really.
Wow.
Cool.
So, right, Karen Pete.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. Actually, one thing as well, during your PhD, at what point did you want to do your PhD?
As soon as I found out that's what you needed to do to become a lecturer, that's the time I decided I wanted to do it. And then
why that particular PhD?
It's difficult, really. So I'm kind of one of those people, and I realize this as I've moved into game design. I've realized this more and more, that nothing ever really leaves me. I get a lot of I've come to the understanding recently that I'm undiagnosed ADHD.
I'm diagnosed ADHD, but yeah.
Okay, so you'll understand this then, Matt. You'll understand. So like a lot, like things don't really leave me, and I can get quite hyper focused and get quite obsessive about things, but I also can flip between things quite quickly. And when something sticks, it really sticks. But over the course of my kind of academic career, I've always been more left than more on the left. The man whose left leg has just been blown off and he's fallen over sideways. And my politics were developing in specific ways, and I've always been really interested in kind of activist academia as a thing, as much as that exists. And I got really, really into, in my kind of last year of my undergrad, I got really into the concept of like spatial studies. I got really interested in how space functions and how people make use of it, and how, crucially, how it makes use of you, or in my case, how the state makes use of space to make use of you. And then as I was going through my master's, I was kind of exploring this as an academic field, and I was kind of continuing to engage with it on the activist side of things. And I just kind of ended up there with the PhD. But what's been quite nice is that I'm able to keep quite a lot of the kind of things that I learned, and the theories and the movements I engaged with are all very kind of, they're part of that kind of formative conceptualization process for a lot of the games I'm working on as well. So I'll kind of put a game idea down in concept, and then suddenly I'll be like, oh, this is where that came from, or this, or something that happened to me years ago, or I remember doing or researching or looking into years ago will suddenly come back to me. So yeah, that's it's why that one in particular, I suppose it was a very kind of me thing to be doing.
How did you... Sorry, it's a very ADHD thing to interrupt somebody.
I'm trying so hard not to do it right now.
I always catch myself, because I used to do it all the time, and now I catch myself on, and I have to stop myself, because I'm like, that's a really good point. I've got an interesting thing to share about that point.
This is how we do it. This is how we do it. Like, we show empathy by saying, oh, well, that thing you've just said, I've got a similar experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to show you that I understand what you've said by sharing my thing.
This
is going to be fine. I'm feeling very safe right now.
So how did, I'm recently diagnosed ADHD with potential ASD as well. But I enjoyed education in that. Like I did a military history degree, and I did it itself, and I love military history. But that, and then my master's, which I canned off halfway through because I wanted to be a rock and roll star and stuff. How did you, with a person who now, like, I'm not sure at the time if you were aware, but somebody who
absolutely not,
who's ADHD, how did you regiment yourself, or how did you stop yourself from going, oh, shiny thing going off? Like, so when I was in university, I love history. Like, it was a massive thing, but I was so distracted from moving from Northern Ireland to Manchester and being like in this new place, and there's girls who love my accent, and music. There was loads of heavy metal clubs everywhere and stuff, and I was like, and I found it really hard, despite the subjects which I loved, to focus myself on those subjects. And I got like a crappy 2.2, and I could have easily got higher than that had I put, like, that was with no effort. That was literally me doing nothing, and I could have easily sort of moved on, but I couldn't get, like, everything was just distracting me, and I was just so easily sort of going off. How did you restrict yourself? How did you do that?
I mean, I don't really know. I've for a long time I thought I might be on the autism spectrum as well. Like, the last, basically when I started work at that special needs in that school with the special needs department, the SENCO, the SEN coordinator, after about 8 weeks in the job, and I was only 19, 20 at this point, so I wasn't much older than the oldest kids in the school. And after about 8 weeks, the SEN coordinator said to me, she's like, George, have you ever had an autism or an ADHD diagnosis? And I was like, no, like, it hadn't even occurred to me at that point. And I think I've become recently, and I should clarify here that, like, this is a fully undiagnosed thing. But I've spoken to a lot of friends who are kind of active in the field, and friends who've received diagnoses as well. And my partner, bless her, has been doing quite a lot of research into this recently, including attending this talk today. And then she was like, oh, that's you. Which has been very, very lovely. And I've got two of my very, very close friends are both going through diagnoses at the moment, and I always felt that I always thought that I was really comfortable around them because they come from a very similar background to me. But it turns out we're actually all just not masking around each other. So in terms of how I kept myself like, how do I keep myself interested in things? Because you're right, it's all shiny thing, all shiny thing, all shiny thing. One of the ways for me is to let my brain go in those directions, right? Like that, there's no such thing as wasted mental energy in my mind, at least. If you're experiencing something, then you're experiencing it, and the best thing to do is kind of let that happen, in my mind. And the way that I'm able to kind of keep things going is to have several things on at once. Now, I'm not doing all, let's say, so at the moment, for example, Mappa Mundi is obviously my main priority, or has been my main priority, but we're now in the process where we're finishing the book. And so what I generally focused on game design and studio development and stuff like this. It allows me to be generally focused, but it allows me to switch my specific focus between projects. So, and I'm lucky that that's the way my brain works. I tend not to suffer. I don't suffer from the executive dysfunction that I know a lot of people I know with ADHD suffer from. I don't get it in the same way they do. So when I'm kind of experiencing it with one thing, I can, rather than it stopping me from doing anything, I'm normally able to switch onto something else. And so in the academic context, a PhD is great because you're, you know, in my case specifically, I was looking at 4 different movements. And so when I was starting to feel burned out on one and I was, you know, deep into a chapter on that, I could take a few hours, a couple of days, a couple of weeks, or whatever, however long it took to switch off to something else. And I find that's really, really useful for my brain because it's continuing to work in the background, like the back part of my brain that I'm not conscious of is continuing to process ideas while I'm working actively on something else. And then suddenly I'll be like, oh my God, that's it from a couple of weeks ago. And then I'll switch back. And it can sometimes be disruptive. But for me, it's a case of just allowing your brain to do the thing that it wants to do. Like, you have to be disciplined with it. That's kind of how I've gotten around it, is trying to be as self-disciplined as possible. But like, I'm impulsive as hell. Like, impulsivity was my real problem.
Yeah.
But I'm able to kind of channel that, and something that would otherwise maybe be a negative can become a positive because that impulsivity is pushing me. As long as I've set my guidelines up, like, you know, like it's like putting the barriers up when you go bowling, right? Start throwing things down the lane, and then something's going to happen, and you're not going to go too far off course because the barriers are up. So I have. You know, not doing, you know, not like kind of mentally hurting myself, but also they also realize that actually me keeping myself busy and keeping myself going is really helpful. That kind of keeps me going, really.
Just a quick technical thing for people. For some reason, Discord's freezing now and again. It's not being completely disruptive, but now and again it keeps to be freezing for me. So if you're having any technical difficulties watching this, my apologies. It doesn't seem to last very long, but just on the off chance. So with regards to, you know, we're on the ADHD thing, might as well sort of kind of dig a bit deeper, and then we can go on about what we're actually here for. But it's interesting. So for me, the diagnosis was something that was quite an emotional journey. It was something that I felt deep down after being told about it that that's definitely me, and after finding out about it and getting the diagnosis and going through the whole thing. I'm still going through the process of trying to get meds for it, but you know, it was like a massive weight off my shoulders, but it was also at the same time it had this double-edged sword of, had I known earlier, had I been able to at least try and restrict myself. I'm like, you'll not see my room, but like, my room is just pure games and toys and things like that. My impulsivity has been horrendous, to the point where it's got me in trouble a few times. You know, I would just spend, I'm overly generous with money and stuff, even when I don't have it, and the things I'm really sort of bad, like I'll just give it away like it's candy. And it had that sort of feeling of, you know, had I known it earlier, maybe I would have you know, maybe I would have
put strategies in place, right? To try to work
maybe
out
I would
how
have
to deal
got
with
that.
it.
Maybe I would have got that first degree. Maybe I would have actually done my master's. Maybe I would have, you know, done something with the degree that I enjoyed doing, my history degree, or maybe I would have done different things and stuff. and that whole doubt thing was a bit of a problem. But what I'm trying to get around in a very sort of non segue is you seem quite sort of that's not normal, but like you seem to be your shit's together. Your shit's together. Like you have a PhD, you've got a master's, you've got your own game company, you've got you've got all this other stuff. It seems to be going. So the ADHD thing is this. Are you seeking a diagnosis? Are you happy enough just sort of it's a thing that's within me? Or
so I'm quite happy. I would encourage anyone that this is purely my experience with it, and I would encourage anyone to follow the track they need to follow with it, right? And equally, Matt, I would say to you, like everyone's life is full of potentialities. Every choice you make splits your life into 1,000 different possibilities. Yeah, you might have done something more with it, but you might not have achieved the things that you have achieved now, or that you are going to achieve in the future based on the track that you're on. Like, I'm very much a kind of like, you were in the position that you're in, so let's make the best of what we have. So like my upbringing was not easy. And this is the thing. So you're like, thank you for saying that my stuff appears normal. And because I suppose in a way that's kind of everyone wants to come across as a put together, well-rounded human being who doesn't have any kind of stuff going on under the surface. But like, for me, it's been a lot of work to get here. Like, because this is the thing, I've gone off and done a PhD, and you said, oh, you've got your PhD and you've got this. I also haven't ever held down a job for more than like 6 months.
All right, fair dues.
I can't work in offices. I find it incredibly difficult to be in that kind of environment. And so what I've done is kind of knowing that, even if I didn't know the cause of it, I've done the things that have allowed me to, one, do things I'm interested in. So PhD, game design, being a musician, those kinds of things. None of those things pay. And if they do pay, they don't really pay very well. But my whole thing is about taking action, right? The world is changed by doing things, and you are changed by doing things. And for a long time in my teens, I wanted to be a musician, so I started a band, and I started managing that band and doing all this stuff, and eventually we signed this crappy record deal, and I got to tour for a while, and I got to do all these different things. But like, at that point, my life was falling apart around me. Like I was deeply unhappy with who I was as a person. I didn't know why. My relationships were really dysfunctional with my family, and like interpersonal relationships were really dysfunctional as well. And it got to a point when I was 21, I was moving away from uni, and I was like, I don't want to be this person. Like, this is not who I actually am. So I'm going to take an active step and try and change who I am and what I'm doing to be the person that I know that I want to be. And like, I did that, and it's been an ongoing, continuous process. Like last year, my impulsivity, I've got quite a lot of stuff around food,
right? Yeah.
And
Sweet
my impulsivity,
me.
Mine's related with money and the kind of lack of money, and kind of not easy access to food, kind of growing up and stuff. And so like, I was binge eating and spending a fortune on like terrible, unhealthy, delicious but terribly unhealthy food, and it got really out of control. Like last year, like I thought I'd cracked it a few years before, and then I kind of like, without trying to cheapen the term, I kind of relapsed without really realizing it, and I started smoking again, and I was self-medicating, right? And while I was doing that, I was also designing Mappa Mundi, and I was, trying to build this game studio and stuff. And so like, for me, it's very, because impulsivity is my thing. It's very much a case of trying to be self-disciplined, and I feel like I'm at my, I should say this because I'm very much like, again, as you might have guessed with the whole anarchist thing, I'm not a huge fan of the concept of policing. So I'm not policing myself here. I realize that I have an issue with impulsivity. And by trying, again, putting those guidelines up, those bowling lane barriers up, so that if I do start pinging off the walls a little bit, I'm in a safer space. And by focusing on things that I enjoy doing, even if they are not the most lucrative of options, because I grew up with very little money, I know I can live on it. It also helps that I've got a very supportive partner who is a safety net for me. If things go really bad, like I can take this risk. I mean, I'm still working full time and doing freelance work as well, but like I can take the risk of doing something like this because I have a very supportive partner who is able to kind of pick up the slack when things go wrong.
Is she is she got ADHD, or is she just very understanding?
No, she's just incredibly understanding. She's a beautiful, lovely, incredible person. And we've been kind of coming to understand this together. Like we see things on, like my Instagram feed knew I had ADHD before I did, and it started playing me all this ADHD content. And my partner was like, "That's you. Like you do that." And that, and I was like, all right, maybe I do. So yeah, that's kind of the little bit of the journey that I've been on with it recently. And yeah, it's this is, I think it's the case with everyone. Whenever you look into someone else's life, it always seems more placid and calm and put together than it actually is, right? It's just it's the way it is. But I'm in a good place. I'm feeling like the knowledge that this explains quite a lot of things has been very, very helpful. And so I don't feel the need to seek out the diagnosis because I don't particularly feel the need for the medication that diagnosis would unlock. But I would highly suggest to anyone who does think it would help that is something you should pursue.
For me, it was I was pretty much like, I'm not I don't use it as, I have a thing about people who use it as a crutch. I'm very much a case of, like, if you've got it, there are issues with it, and you have to really struggle through them, and it's not easy. But I see a lot of YouTubers and people on TikTok and stuff who use it as, I can't do these things because I have that. And it's like, that's not true. You can. It's just harder, and you have.
My take on it is, I don't stand in judgment on anyone doing if people want to kind of put themselves across that way, then I've certainly been in positions like that where I'm like, I don't think I can actually do this or whatever. And if people are in that position, if that's the headspace they're in with it, then, I will do what I can to kind of help that. If it's people I know interpersonally, then I'm here to help, right? Whatever I can do to kind of alleviate someone's issues, then or problems they might be facing, then I'm here. That's what I'm here for, right? Like, I have enough things I have to spend my energy on in my day-to-day life, and spending my energy worrying about how other people are talking about something they're going through is not really that's not my concern, right? Like, I've got other things I can be spending my energy on.
Yep, that's a good point. I think you have that sort of because it's seen, like when I went to see the GP about it, he gave me a look of, this is a fad. You're literally just jumping on the bandwagon. He didn't say it, but I got that impression because he wasn't keen on getting me referred. Basically said, if you do it in the NHS, it'll take 6 years. And I was just like, is there no other way? Anyone, I could refer you to Psychology UK, and you could do it through that. And I did eventually push him. I said, look, man, I'm not going to. This isn't some fads. I am horrendous in my relationships. I've had some really bad things. I'm impulsive as hell. I have trouble all over the place with everything. I need help, and you're the man who needs to help me with this. And he eventually relented. And as much as it's been a struggle, I'm still waiting on getting medication for it. But at least knowing about it and being able to, at least if I'm about to do something, I have that option of going, this potentially isn't what you should be doing. This is an impulse. It doesn't make, like today I went out and bought loads of chocolate, because that's an easy fix for me and stuff like that. But it's having that sort of thing gives me the option and give me a sort of a definitive, and I've used it now and again, sort of like, if somebody's giving me a really hard time, I say, look, you just have to understand, I am ADHD as hell, and I mean well, and I will try hard. I will not use it. I will not sort of sit on it and say, I can't do this. I will try everything. And sometimes you will get more work out of me than anybody in the space of an hour than you will. But some days I'll just do nothing because I just haven't got that sort of headspace for it and stuff.
Yeah, so I know exactly what you mean.
If you can take the peaks and troughs, and that's why when it comes to these jobs, and you're talking about sort of you couldn't do the office jobs, I was lucky. I've been lucky enough Like I had some bad jobs where the ADHD thing really did not work because they were very strict about certain things and they didn't have that leeway to let you sort of have downtime. You know, they really appreciated it when you had that sort of focus moment where you were just being amazing at everything.
They'll take 3 days of work out of you in 2 hours, absolutely. But when you need some understanding and stuff, then that's when you're the problem. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But then I had 2 jobs where I was given a bit more like, this is what you need to do. Basically, as long as you don't, and we don't care what you do in between, as long as that's the outcome, and that is perfect for me. So it's literally, and then every now and again you get that sort of panic moment where it's like, this needs to be done now, and then your ADHD brain goes into panic mode, and you sort of get forced into hyper focus mode. It's not pleasant, but it works. And so, you know, I've held down a half decent job for a while, so it's just like, because I've been given that leeway to be able to do what I need to do. So some days I might not do very much, but other days I'll be up till 9-10 o'clock at night, just focusing, doing a spreadsheet, doing something because somebody's asked me to do it, or just because I think it would be good to do that thing. So it has its peaks and troughs, and I think it's just especially it's the same with relationships. My girlfriend she's definitely ADHD. We have this sort of kind of symbiotic sort of thing where I think we understand each other when we're doing like, she goes off and zones out and does things, worries about stupid things, is quite impulsive about sort of like vaping and worrying about stuff like about things, and we both sort of understand each other, and it makes it a bit of a I say girlfriend, she's going to be my wife in 3 weeks. My fiance.
My fiance. Let's not undersell this relationship.
Let's understand. We're getting married in 3 weeks. But yeah, so
congratulations, by the way.
Out of curiosity, by the way, George, you had mentioned that you kind of struggled with office jobs. How was kind of COVID and like the remote working? Has that made things easier?
This sounds like a horrible thing to say, but COVID was such a boon for my style of working because
agreed.
I always wanted to work from home. I always wanted a job where I could work from home, and the jobs that I was doing before I went to uni and while I was at uni, you know, were always necessarily in-person jobs. COVID, I mean, I started game design during the kind of the tail end of the COVID lockdowns.
So about 2021?
Yeah, so 2021 was when I really started in earnest, and I started off with a miniature war game that I designed and, you know, and have bought to market through STLs and PDF rules downloads and stuff like that. It's called Margrave the Marcher Lords.
I've heard that. I've heard of that.
Oh well, there we go. So that was me.
I'm massive in my war games, so it's okay. Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, so I started that during lockdown because I used to do content creation for a Song of Ice and Fire tabletop miniatures game.
Oh yes, it's one of my favorite table. I'm playing a 120 point 3v3 tomorrow.
Beautiful. So I used to be a content creator for that game. I had the biggest dedicated channel for it, which made me a big fish in a small pond. But that gave me the confidence to start doing something I'd always wanted to do, which was game design. I did the stupid option of starting with a mass battle, mass miniature war game, which is a terrible idea, but I cut my teeth on something really, really difficult, and made the decision with the support of Joel Kilpatrick, who's the artist for 3 Cell Studios, and Jeremy Blum, who is he's our developer, and we all kind of co-own the business. With their support, I was able to sit. I'd been working on Margrave, and I had Mappa Mundi had started development while I was still doing site design work while I was still working on Margrave, and eventually I made the decision to pivot 3 Cell Studios away from miniatures games because they are essentially impossible for an indie. These mass rank and flank mass battle war games are essentially impossible for an indie to bring to market. And so I made the decision to pivot the business away from that and onto TTRPGs, and it's the best thing I've ever decided to do. Like, from in my design, at this moment, relatively brief design career, but also kind of from the publishing side of things. So working from home was excellent for me and continues to be excellent for me because I am able to decompress. I'm able to not be in that office environment, and I'm able to, in those moments of downtime, I'm able to switch my attention as and when I need to away from full-time work onto design work. And yeah, so it's I hate to say it because obviously COVID was a horrible, awful thing, and continues to be a horrible, awful thing. Like, it's not, we're talking about it as if it's gone, it's still around. I bought it back from the UK Games Expo with me. Both me and my partner fell sick with it coming back from. I just thought I was really run down and tired because I'd been on for 4 days. But we both ended up with COVID, so like it's still going around, and people have been massively affected by long COVID, and it's horrible and terrifying. But the one good thing for me that came out of it was the switch to being able to work from home, and as a consequence of that, being able to start 3 Cell Studios as a kind of game design business. Initially just me, and then myself and Joel, and then now me, Joel, and Jeremy. And start to produce games that we're all really proud of. So
that's amazing. Yeah, it's just like you're living my dream, and if there was things that I would say I wanted to do in my life was create my own game, actually have a PhD, being able to do that thing, and then create my own game. I was in a band. We had an album, we had a few music videos and stuff. We did a little bit of touring, but it wasn't anything because we were melodic metal and stuff, so it was slightly niche.
Hey man, we was like 2005 Essex metal scene, man. We were like metalcore all the way.
Well, what was your band called?
We were called. I'm actually not going to say because I'm too embarrassed.
Why?
I will send you a message off stream.
Okay, cool. My band is, not that we've done anything in a very long time, called Skin the Pig. You can find us on Spotify and on YouTube and all those other gubbins. But yeah, it's like I'd love it's funny how you say about the mass miniature war game, because I think that's it's a big ADHD thing where you want everything. You're like, this is the thing that I really love, and I think I could do a million things with this, and I could do this. I had this sort of idea of this 4D epic scalable game where you could start off with small sort of it could even be like card counters where you could start off with small sort of things, and then it would scale bigger and bigger and bigger, and then you could have where you'd have land, you would have levels for air, you could even have space, and there would be all this interaction between them and stuff like this. And I had all these
planetary scale, like solar system scale. Multi-level. I've got a lot of time for that, man.
Yeah, man, there's all kinds of sort of
What isn't the problem with that though? Is that the wargaming scene is massively crowded.
Yes,
it is.
And
I think for independent studios like yourself, it must be challenging to kind of
that's an interesting, Pete. That's a really interesting point, because actually, when you look at it, from my mind at least, the TTRPG space is a million times more crowded than the miniature wargame space. But the vibes are very, very different. The barrier to entry with TTRPGs is so much lower than miniature war games. Now, admittedly, you can PDF, you can upload a PDF of a miniature war game rules, 1-page rules or whatever you want to Wargame Vault, Drive Through RPG, Itch, anything you want. You can just put it out there. The difference, and both sectors of tabletop games, war games and TTRPGs, as these two of a number of sectors. Both of them are also dominated by a single large player. So obviously for RPGs, it's D&D, it's Hasbro D&D. For miniature war games, it's Games Workshop and 40k, primarily 40k. And then you've got the other kind of corporate players in both spaces, and then you've got the third parties. The thing that you don't have so much in war games, in my mind, is you don't have the indies in the same way, or not operating at the same scale.
Agreed.
TTRPG indies. So one of my favorite companies in the TTRPG space are Rowan Rook and Deckard, and they're big indie now, right? They've got a good number of employees who are full-timers, who are being really well looked after by the company. The company are putting out incredible, innovative games on a regular basis that are pushing the boundaries in kind of design space and layout space and artwork space. And they're still an indie, right? They're still an independent company. There's 13 of them. I defy you to find me a company in the wargaming space who is at that scale, who doesn't have substantial investment money behind them.
I'm not
normally from private sources.
I'm not sure. I understand. I agree with what you're saying, the premise. I would say with the advent of like Kickstarter, that indie tabletop miniature games are a lot more achievable now than
They're
they
achievable.
were. Yeah.
As a one-off, though, in my mind, you can fund it. So we funded Margrave. We funded Margrave on GameFound in September 2023, but I cancelled the campaign 2 days before the end because I realized that we were on an absolute razor's edge. If anything went wrong, that would have been it, and that would have been my reputation destroyed and my backers' money lost, and I just wasn't prepared to take that risk when it came to that particular scenario. But so we were able to, that would have put us into production. But because miniature war games, because of the culture of miniature war games, there always needs to be new releases. New releases need new sculpts, they need new molds, they need new, you need to be shipping that stuff, you need to be selling it in advance if you can. It's an incredibly, incredibly difficult space if you are not independently wealthy, which I am not.
And there's a lot of, like, we've had a fair few on the podcast and stuff. We've talked about Kickstarters and the stress and stuff that comes with them, and anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And there's loads of them where they've got to the point where they've lost money, and to make the game just come out, they've had to spend their own money to get it going and stuff. And there's a lot more. I think with TTRPGs, it's literally you're buying the artist, you're buying the production of the book are the two main overheads, I think.
And to be fair, when it comes to the TTRPGs especially, you don't even have to buy the literal physical book. You can just buy the PDF.
This is the thing. The barrier to entry for creators is considerarly lower, but the barrier to entry for customers and for players is infinitesimally small. Yeah. Like, if you want to start, we'll use Warhammer, we'll use 40k as an example because it's the one that everyone knows. Yeah. If you want to buy a half-sized Games Workshop 40k army, you're looking at hundreds of pounds. Yeah, but just for like 1,000 points, when the normal size, well, when I was growing up, at least the normal size was 2,000 points. I think it might be 1,750 or whatever it is now, but maybe it's still 2,000. Like, that costs a fortune just in money, not to mention the time it takes to build them, to paint them, and then to get the gaming space. TTRPGs, easiest thing in the world. Download a PDF. I mean, so for example, the Mappa Mundi pre-release guide, right? That's all of the rules for the game, all 4 character types, 1 full region, and a pre-written adventure. That's yours for free. You go to Drive-Thru RPG right now. It's available. Pay what you want, which for most people means it's free. And we put that together, and I learned to do layout, putting the book together, and all this kind of stuff. And we're moving towards our crowdfunding campaign in February, but the book will be 100% finished when we go to crowdfunding. The idea being that we're using the crowdfunding to pay for production rather than for ongoing development. But players can literally right this second, the 3 of us right now could run a game right now. Even assuming that I wasn't the designer, we could literally download the rules. That's it. Robert Shafada's brother, and off we go. Yep. That barrier to entry is so much lower.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of games now are kind of releasing a pre-release starter guide. I mean, Free League have just released Zone Wars for the skirmish war game, and they've released the complete rule system for playing the game completely free.
So this is the way, in my mind, this is what we were doing with Margrave, is the rules were always available for free and still are available for free, because it's, 1, I'm not Games Workshop, and 2, the rules are the minimum thing you need to play. Like, you don't make, well, Games Workshop do make money off of their books. They've always made money off of their books. But again, that's Games Workshop. But a miniatures company makes its money off of its miniatures. That's the idea. You should make that barrier to entry as low as humanly possible to sell people your product. Like, when we were at the Games Expo, a lot of people were shocked when I was telling them what we were giving away for free with the pre-release guide. Because one person was like, well, I don't ever have to buy the actual book when it comes out. And I was like, well, no, you don't. Like, if you don't want to, you don't have to buy it. You can go into this and just make up all of your own stuff. But all of the stuff you actually need is in there. And this person was like, well, why are you doing that? And my take on it is that if you are generous with people, they tend to be generous back, either with their time, their attention, or their money. Ideally, all three. But if you are generous with people, they will be generous back with you. And even if they're not generous back with you, you did a good thing by being generous. Like, generosity in my mind is an objectively good thing. And so the TTRPG space allows me to feel like I can do that far more successfully than I ever could with a miniatures war game, which requires a huge upfront buy-in and then a sustained process of purchases to keep up with the releases. An RPG, by the book, it's done. If there's a supplement, it's one more book. Or maybe one more after that. But at that point, you definitely know if you like it or not. What I've tried to do with Mappa is I want people... Quick start guides are great. They're wonderful. They're an excellent, excellent thing. And everyone should release one if they can in the run-up to releasing their game. I wanted to go one step further with that and do the pre-release guide. We were going to call it a quick start, but it's got more in it than most quick starts do. So I was like, I can't... It's like 101 pages. It's not particularly quick. Yeah. So we called it the pre-release guide, but my take on it is that you should, like, if you pick up this PDF, you can play the pre-written adventure that we've put in there, and then we've given you 2 more monsters for that region. You can play a mini campaign of 3 linked sessions. By the time you finish it, you know if you like this game or not. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter that I've given it to you for free because you're not going to buy it anyway. If you do like it, you really, really know that you like it and you're going to want more. And here I am with a finished book in February, come February time for Kickstarter. Here is me offering you the opportunity to buy a finished book. Thank you very much for taking part. Come and join our community. You're always welcome. I want you to really know that you want it. Because if you don't, then that's fine. I hope you enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, and kind of putting together a starter set is an art form. You've got to kind of produce something that gives them enough to play a few games to whet their appetite for the setting, so that when it comes to the kind of the full release, you kind of then it's got everything, but still there's got to be something in the original starter set that kind of can carry over as well.
Yeah,
be it knowledge. I mean, Cyberpunk Red starter set was brilliant because they had like the starter guide, but they had all these maps and counters as well. Which you could then kind of use in your subsequent games.
Yeah, the starter sets are a real art, and they're something that we're not in a position to produce a starter set. I mean, the pre-release guide is serving our purpose of allowing people to play the game in advance, but starter sets are definitely something I want to look into as the studio hopefully becomes self-supporting. And you're right, there is a real art to them, but they're an accessibility thing as well.
Yeah,
friendly local game stores are, as always, the lifeblood of communities, and a decent friendly local game store is a place you can go and play some games. A good one is a place where you feel welcome to go and play games. A great one is where you feel welcome to play games and there are people there who can help you discover new games. And so starter sets are a really great way of doing that, because the staff at FLGS or the community, the more enfranchised community members can sit there and say, right, well, this week I'm going to run Mappa Mundi. I'm going to use the pre-release guide, or I'm going to use the pre-written adventure. Here's all the stuff we need in one box. Off we go. 3 hours later, everyone's enjoyed it, and maybe someone's going to buy a copy of it as well. But yeah, it's, exposure. This is the most difficult thing for indie studios. It's one among several difficult things, but it's, for us, the biggest problem is always going to be exposure. It's always going to be getting people's eyes on the game, onto you as a studio, but onto the game that you want them to purchase. That becomes, especially for a first game, this will form people's opinion of us. This will shape people's opinion of us for a significant amount of time. And as a creator, I took a risk with this game, and I was like, right, well, there's no combat in it. There's no combat in Mappa Mundi. There is, and when we were at the Games Expo, I'd start the pitch. I didn't really realize I was doing this, but about a few hours in, I was like, oh, actually, I've accidentally done a marketing. And I would sit there and say to people, right, this is Mappa Mundi. I'm going to give you the Marmite bit of the pitch. Do you want to hear it? And what you're doing there is you're inviting someone into a shared conspiracy with you because they're like, yeah, I do want to hear it. What is it?
What is
like,
it?
You sure?
What is it?
So it's the no combat. It's the lack of combat is the thing. And like when I was first designing Mappa Mundi, I was like, oh, maybe I should put combat in because people really like it. But like, it doesn't fit with my design philosophy for this game. It doesn't fit with the setting. It doesn't fit with the space. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll just put it in and de-emphasize it. And then I just looked at myself one day. I was like, stop being a coward. If you don't want to put combat in it, don't put fucking combat in it. If people really want combat, they're not going to buy the game anyway, even if you de-emphasize it, because you're basically telling them off for making a choice. Just take it out. And the response we got at Games Expo to this was phenomenal. Like, there were people who were part of the ADHD thing is I get quite hyper empathetic.
Yeah.
Like I really physically feel people's emotions. And there was this one woman, bless her, she set me up so perfectly for the weekend. I will never forget this. And I can't 100% remember her name, but I think she's in our if I'm remembering it correctly, she's now in our Discord. And she turned up on the Friday morning, and it was like an hour into the expo. We'd been there for press preview on the Thursday. We were an hour into the expo, and people would start coming by, and people were getting really interested, and that was great. And then there was a little like 2 or 3 minute quiet period, and she came up and she's like, "What's this? That artwork looks beautiful." I said, "Thank you. This is Mappa Mundi." And I started giving her the pitch. And over the course of 5 minutes, she's getting so excited. She's physically shaking with this excitement. And then I'm like, oh, I can't take it. Oh my God. And it was just that set the tone for the rest of the weekend. Because I was like, you know what? People like the fact that it hasn't got combat. They like the fact that it's the tagline, an exploration and ecology RPG. Everyone's like, what's that? What's an ecology RPG? And you'd get people coming up and talking to us about it. And it was beautiful. And again, that question of exposure is to kind of return to that point that like exposure is so difficult for TTO because it's a crowded space.
Yeah.
Like if you go on to Drive Through RPG, there's like 170,000 things you can download. How do you stand out in that? Do you know what I mean?
And that's why it kind of helps. If you've got a great FLGS, they will support the local indie developer scene. If of course I'm a local one, they've got RPGs by Shep, like Guy Complex. Chris Shepperson, who we've had on the podcast before, he just lives about 10 minutes away from me, and so yeah, it's just great when they're supported. One thing as well I want to ask as well is like, drama is based on conflict. When there's no combat in a game, how do you have that conflict necessary to drive the drama in the game?
So a lot of people ask me this question. Sometimes they phrased it in different ways. They're like, well, if there's no combat, where's the jeopardy coming from?
Yeah.
Or if there's no conflict, where does the drama come from? And in my mind, what people are doing is they are confusing themselves as a source of danger with the creation of interesting conflict. Now, Mappa Mundi is, let me see if I can, I don't know if my headphones will stretch to get over there. Okay, I can't reach right now. But in Mappa Mundi, what's the
whole premise behind Mappa Mundi? So
okay,
start from the start. Yeah.
Of course. So Mappa Mundi is an exploration and ecology RPG. It's set in a parallel version of our own world. In this world, massive climate events have separated the regions of the world from one another. Now, Fate created this world unknowingly. She is the unknowing creator, and she is unknowingly unmaking it as well. Now, you play as chroniclers. You are chroniclers who are graduates of the Mappa Mundi Institute, and your job is to go out into the world and engage with, document, and learn about all of the world's creatures, cultures, and primarily its monsters, in order to lock them into Fate's design. Because once they're written into the chronicle that you write, the history, geography, and biology of the world, once you've written them down, they can't be erased anymore. So they're like, things are physically disappearing from the world. Your job is to go out and track them down and learn about them, revealing their behaviors before they are unmade by Fate. So that's the basic premise. So it's like inspiration wise, one of the inspirations that I wrote in the front cover is it's Monster Hunter but flipped on its head. Like Monster Hunter is a game. Oh look, this is the only monster of its kind in the whole world.
Kill it.
Better swing an axe into its face. Like, what kind of psychopath are you that does that? Like, it's like going and seeing, oh, well, there's the world's last red panda. I'm gonna punch it to death. Like, what is wrong with you?
Oh, it's like Pokemon. Not if you think about Pokemon and stuff, you're going around.
So this was the thing. The original idea for Mappa Mundi was I woke up and I said to my partner, I was like, what if there was a game that was like Pokemon? But it was like a medieval world map thing, and your job was to fill in the Pokedex, but without capturing anything and without making them fight each other in underground dogfights.
Yeah, it's weird.
That was it. That's the core. That was the core premise for Mappa Mundi. So, Pete, to get back to your question on this, one of the things I would say to people is you swear an oath when you leave the Mappa Mundi Institute to do no harm. That doesn't mean anyone else in the world has sworn an oath to do no harm.
True.
One of our monsters in the Barbecia region, so it's featured in the Quick Start guide. So Barbecia is our version of medieval France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, right? We've done what. This is going to sound like a weird statement. All of our monsters are real mythological monsters, so they're based on real world mythological monsters, right?
Oh, nice.
So one of them is the Tarasconus. So D&D fans will know this as the Tarask. So it's like a dragon turtle thing, right? The D&D one, I like the concept, but I really don't like the artwork. Our one is based on, like medieval French mythology of what a Tarasconus actually looked like. It's 60 foot tall. It's a lion, dragon, turtle, tortoise thing. The artwork is beautiful. Like, people will be able to see it online soon. Unfortunately, we didn't have the artwork when we put the pre-release guide together, but it's, I can make sure to share it. That thing is 60 foot tall and has huge razor sharp claws. That hasn't sworn an oath to do no harm. The difference is you need, rather than going in and stabbing it in the face, your job is to go and uncover its 8 unique behaviors through skillful gameplay, clever use of skills, and understanding of the environment and the behavior of the creature.
So how does that work as it's combat without combat? It's sort of like
it is. Think about it like a boss battle.
Yeah.
Think about it like a boss battle. So like the job of the narrator, we don't have GMs or DMs. There's no hierarchy in this game. Like, to put that into perspective, our core mechanic is a thing called shaping. Players tell the narrator what is in the world. Like, the narrator provides a framework, but the players are actively engaged in building that world, rather than saying to a GM, oh, well, what does my character know about this thing? And then the GM tells you what you know about it, and then you just repeat the words to the rest of the party. In our game, you walk into a forest. I'll give you a basic overview of what a forest in Barbecia might look like, and then the whole party takes turns in giving me details from that forest, and I then weave them all together and we carry on. It's the same with the monsters as well. The monsters have a list of 8 behaviors that we have given them, but the narrator kind of will set up, we call it the encounter phase. You have the research phase, the journey phase, the encounter phase. The narrator will set up a scenario where there's almost a kind of boss battle arena going on. There is a kind of delineated, described space in which this monster exists, and your job is to move around it. And then we have these interactions. So, for example, you can touch it, you can sing to it, you can sketch it, you can provoke it or protect it or feed it or give it a gift or talk to it or listen to it or commune with it. All of these different things, we call them interactions. They work like skills do. We have narrative skills as well. And you use these, and the narrator comes up with challenges or opportunities to help you reveal those behaviors. And if you mess them up, each of the monsters in the game has threads, right? Think of them like reverse HP points. Well, think of behaviors like reverse HP points. Your job is to reveal 8 behaviors. But if you mess up, you sever threads. And once all the threads on that monster are severed, it's gone and your opportunity is finished. So you will often not reveal all 8 behaviors. You might reveal 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 or 2 or 1 or whatever. But your job is to through clever gameplay and clever use of skills, and crucially through player skill rather than just through character skill, your job is to make that encounter run as long as you can until you get as many of those behaviors as you can, and then the encounter is over, and you write down this monster in your bestiary that you as a party are creating as you move throughout this world.
What's the score with, like, do you have BBEGs? Is there, how does, so if
I mean, we have antagonists. There are antagonists out in the world. Some of the monsters are incredibly dangerous. Some of them are very benevolent. There are, the final book will be full of story hooks for NPCs and antagonists you can bring in, but there's no evil overlord who's trying to bring the world to an end. Exactly like our world, the Earth is neither to an individual human, to a single individual human, the world is neither hostile nor benevolent. It's indifferent to your presence here. As an entire collective species, as we can see happening around us on an everyday basis, we have a tremendous effect on the Earth as a series of interconnected ecosystems. But as an individual, you are literally nothing. Now, so in that same vein, the world that Mappa Mundi is set in is indifferent to your presence. What makes you a hero, and so as a consequence, there's no big bad evil guy. There's no overarching plot to end the world. There are people, and Pete, to return to your point a little bit about where does conflict come from? Conflict comes from where conflict always comes from, which is interactions and relationships and trying to overcome challenges. Combat, in my mind, is the most boring resolution to conflict that possibly exists. Because what happens? Someone is dead. You've not learned anything. The only thing you've gained are the clothes off their back and the gold in their pockets. Nothing has changed. If anything, the world has been made a more violent place by your actions. Avoiding conflict. Now, so I am not an advocate for pacifism. Again, the anarchist in me fully supports the use of, the diversity of tactics, recognizes that the state is a form of violence and can often only be combated through violence, but that other means exist. Mappa Mundi is me exploring a philosophical space and a game design space. And as a game designer, my challenge to you as a player is, how do you stop a mass extinction event happening without contributing to that mass extinction?
Yeah, you can't hit it with an axe.
No, don't hit it with why. And why would you? But this is the thing. How, like,
Pete's character punched a shark once in one of our games.
I mean, everyone's punched a shark at least once. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how, like, games got different phases. Because I've seen, like, with various RPGs lately, they started taking a phased approach. Before, initially, we had kind of in-game and out-of-game. Now we kind of got, like, the different phases of an event. Looking back at, like, the One Ring RPG, they kind of got the journey phase.
I loved the One Ring. I absolutely loved the
journey
One
phase,
Ring.
Exploration phase. Yeah. And you kind of, it's interesting how that development kind of embraced the kind of original element of out game, in game, to kind of having phased different stages of an adventure, of its journey, of a story.
And this is it. So Mappa Mundi, all three phases are mechanically linked. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see these because they're like, oh no, we can see them fine.
Yeah,
so these are
lovely.
These are our journey cards. Now, a full deck. What you will receive with Mappa Mundi, the full physical copy, is you will get the book and you will get a deck of 72 tarot-sized journey cards. 36 of those are landscapes. 4 of them are like generic opportunity and creature cards, and 30 of them are monsters. Is that 72? No, that's 70. Yes. That's 74. No, it's sorry, yeah. So yeah, either way, there's 72 of them. And so during the research phase, which is the first phase of gameplay, this is your more kind of typical role-playing experience. You go into a town or a village, you learn about, you start gathering information about your target. Now, your target is normally going to be a monster, but it can be a cultural event. It could be a kind of a geological thing that's going to happen. There's lots of leeway for narrators to kind of allow for this emergent narrative to happen. And emergent, now I want you to keep that phrase in mind. That's really key to what Mappa Mundi is trying to do, is this sense of emergent narrative, but it comes from the players, not from the narrator. So during the research phase, you go into a village and you start start researching, start learning about your target, talking to NPCs, finding things around town, whatever it might be. And during that phase, I, as the narrator, am building a deck of these cards, of these landscape cards. And let me try and find a good example where you can really see the difference. So this is the lake card. So you can see that these have radial symmetry on them.
Yeah.
It's the same image. Technically, it's the same image up and down, but colored differently. Now, as you are discovering things, and crucially not discovering things about the wilderness around you, I am building this deck of cards and I'm putting them in different orientations. When the research phase comes to an end, you then go into the journey phase and you play through these cards one at a time. The orientation, the order and the orientation that they come out of the deck is really important. And this is where our shaping mechanic that I was telling you about earlier on really comes into its own, because when you visit that lake, you are telling me what the lake looks like. You might give me one word or 3 words or an emotion or a sentence or a paragraph. But crucially, I'd say, Pete, tell me what the lake looks like. What creatures can you see? And you'd give me a description and I'd kind of respond to it a little bit. And then I'd say, Matt, can you zoom in on that? Can you zoom out of it? What does your character feel about what they're experiencing at the moment? And you will build on what Pete has said. And then my job as the narrator is to tie that together and carry it forward as we continue through the rest of the game. And so then the next card comes out, and then the next card comes out. And then once those cards have been played through, the final orientation of them will then influence the posture of the monster that you're approaching. If more of them are right-wise, which is right way up, the monster will be passive. If more of them are inverted, which is upside down, the monster will be aggressive. Now, aggressive and passive are kind of convenient shorthand. An aggressive monster is not necessarily going to come out teeth snarling, but it means that it's more of its threads have been severed. It means your experience of unlocking all the behaviors is going to be made more difficult. So this sense of mechanically linked phases is really, really important to Mappa. It's a game that the narrator knows the start point and knows the end point and knows some of the ingredients that are going to go into it. But the start point is you arrive in this place. The end point is the monster leaves or disappears or whatever. But everything that happens in between that is player-led. And the narrator's job, that sounds like it might be quite difficult for a narrator, but actually it means that there's very, very little prep pre-game. You need to know your setting, and you need to know your monster, but we provide information for that in the book. If you want to use it or if you want to kind of workshop it, that's entirely up to you. But it means there's very little prep for the narrator. It's not hours and hours and hours of drawing charts and writing maps and scripting NPC dialogue, only for the players to turn left at the fork instead of right.
Been there.
And all your prep works out of the window. I was a forever GM. I know what that feels like. So Mappa Mundi is it's a collaborative storytelling experience. That's what it is, through the lens of you are chroniclers who are stepping out into the world. And when we were talking, so Matt, when you were asking about big bad evil guys and stuff, and I was saying it's the world is indifferent to you as individuals. The thing that in my mind the most heroic thing that anyone can do is look at something that is so much bigger than them and say, I will go. Send me out there. I will take the step forward. I will try to do something. I will try to take action in whatever way I can, even in the face of insurmountable odds or hostile indifference or anything. And this is the hero's fantasy, right? The difference is in D&D and other games like that, the fantasy is look at me become a demigod because the DM left too many goblins in that last dungeon, and last week I was living on the streets and now I'm the world's most powerful cleric. Like, Mappa Mundi is incremental change, but the consequences of taking that action are huge. The ultimate stakes are on the line, which is the continued existence of the world. And the most heroic thing you can do is to say, I will be the one to go. I will step forward.
Is there leveling?
So there is leveling how would I describe this? So rather than experience points, in Mappa Mundi, you gain expertise. So you are chroniclers. You are trained to do a job. And despite our conversations about ADHD and holding down jobs earlier on, the idea is that as you do your job, you get better at it, right? That's the idea. That over time you get more confident to do more difficult things, and you'll get more likely to achieve those difficult things. So Mappa Mundi has 4 abilities. It's exploration, observation, traversal, and deduction. That's it. Just 4 abilities, and then a whole bunch of narrative skills. Now, so those, when you start the game, you start with 4 dice, 2 d4s and 2 d6s. Now, Mappa Mundi, because fate is a big thing, I've tried to de-abstract what dice are. So we call them bones. Everyone in the world of Mappa Mundi carries a set of bones with them, and they roll those bones to consult with fate about things, about decisions they could make. So you are rolling dice, so is your character. So you start off with 2 d4s and 2 d6s. You have a strength and a weakness, each license. So Archivist, Diviner, Fixer, and Guardian, those are your 4 character classes. We don't call them classes because you can spec into any of the other skills, but you have to have one to start with. So each of them have a strength and a weakness related to one of those 4 abilities. So an Archivist, for example, they're like biologists and historians and map makers. They have a strength in observation and a weakness in traversal. A Guardian, meanwhile, is the sworn protector of monsters and companions. They are very, very good at traversal, but they're not very good at deduction because they see things as quite black and white. So you assign a d6 to your strength and a d4 to your weakness, and then you put the other d6 and the other d4 in either of the other 2 where you want them. So rather than your character leveling up, your dice level up, your expertise grows. So a d4 becomes a d6 becomes a d8, a d8 becomes a d12. And you gain expertise by succeeding in those abilities a fixed number of times, but also failing in them a fixed number of times as well. So if you want to upgrade your traversal bone from a d4 to a d6, you need to succeed with it 6 times and fail with it 3 times. And once you've done that, you can spend those points, and suddenly your d4 becomes a d6, which means things you couldn't do before, you now have a chance to do.
Like
equally, if you want to
for failures.
Exactly. Well, this is the thing. You learn from failure.
Yeah,
we all learn from failures, and so that should be reflected in. That should be reflected. Now, I adapted this system from Mouse Guard. I think Mouse Guard is an incredible game, and they do something similar with dice. They don't call it expertise. We're doing it in a slightly different way, but like hand up, like that's where that mechanics inspiration comes from. And I think they do it excellently, and I've just tweaked it to make it fit Mappa more accurately. But it just makes sense. People don't level up. Like you're in Mappa Mundi, you're not a druid, you're not a ranger, you're not an elf. You don't develop in these ways. You are just a normal human being who has chosen to go and be trained to do something, and as you do it, you get better at it. You're still just that you can still fail like you could when you started. A 1 on a d4 is the same as a 1 on a d12, but you've got 8 extra levels of success you can get to. You know, a Guardian who's just left the Mappa Mundi Institute might be very good at climbing a single tree, and they can do that on a d4, but they're not going to climb a mountain that's just had a landslide on it. But someone who's been out in the wilds for a few years and has upped their expertise and been like, actually, you know what? I've scaled mountains before. This one's just a bit more treacherous. They could, with a D12, they're more likely to be able to do that. So that sense of leveling comes from your dice level up rather than the character levels up.
Like that.
Thanks.
It's definitely different in a good way. Like I was brought up in war games, and fighting is all I've known all my life.
Yeah.
It's all it was. And the only sort of like the first non-fighting game that I played, and I really didn't want to do it, with Call of Cthulhu. which reminds me, there's a guy called A Pint of Cthulhu, which is a lot of Cthulhu.
I was on that, so I was on. Yeah, I was. Oh, sorry. There. I was on. I did some recordings with them this weekend.
Oh yes, it says George is an amazing guy. And Mappa Mundi is awesome. Yeah, but yeah,
well, that's good to hear because I ran a session for them last night, so I'm glad they enjoyed it.
I was just like, I don't know if I'm going to like this because I'm very much used to being like I DM most of the time, but I'm a very boring warrior type, very sort of I'm always lawfully good. I'm always sort of like looking to do the best thing, be the
me too.
The good guy. I can't bring myself to be bad guys. It just is
yeah,
not
I can't do it. I just can't do it.
In any games, it makes me feel guilty, so I just sort of have to be sort of the good guy.
Hey, Mappa Mundi is going to be right up your street. It's going to be right up your street.
Yeah, like and then. And I played it, and I was basically an old army guy who, you know, I had military background, but I was old, so that I couldn't really do anything and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was just maybe a bit of a noble, and it was amazing. It was just really good. There wasn't a lot of combat. It was all about sort of like figuring things out and doing rituals and stuff. And I really enjoyed it, and I was sort of, it sort of caught me off guard, and I like that with new games. Like, again, I've been brought up with miniature games. I've always sort of, I like things. I like having tangible things. I still like having tangible things. But one of my favorite games is a game called The Resistance, which is a card-based sort of like, you know, if you've ever played Werewolf or Secret Hitler or whatever it's called, you know, those games where you got to figure out who's basically the bad guy. And I love that game. And it doesn't need a lot. All it is is some cards and stuff. So you don't need combat to sort of enjoy a game.
It's just, this is the thing, like, don't get me wrong, like, I grew up with miniatures games as well. Well, I mean, I could very rarely afford them, but I would play, like, PC versions of them and stuff like that. I was huge into RTS. Like, don't get me wrong, I fully understand the appeal of it. So behind me, on the shelf behind me, is some of my RPGs. And one of the favorites that I've bought recently is Fabula Ultima. So it's I'm a huge JRPG fan.
Right.
That is the essence of my game design. Is I was brought up playing 100+ hour Final Fantasy games, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like written through me like a stick of rock. But I don't. So I that style of storytelling very much informs my design philosophy, but I don't design JRPGs. But Fabula Ultima is incredible. It's everything I wanted it to be as a JRPG. And there's combat in it. Because, you know, like the root of most JRPGs, if you were to sum up almost every JRPG in a single sentence, it's be a teenager, kill God. That's the point of every game, right? Like there's different inciting incidents, but you're a teenager who kills God, and like that's, you know,
in a mech.
Sometimes in a mech, yeah. And sometimes God is also a mech, and it's all very confusing. But like those games, you kill gods in them, and it's fantastic, and I love it. I love, you know, Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII, one of my favorite characters of all time, carries the most ridiculously huge sword ever and smacks people about with it. I get it. I love it. The thing is almost every game serves that need. Yep. Almost every game serves that need. Equally behind me as well, there is Ryutama. Now, Ryutama has a tiny little bit of combat in it, but it's a storytelling game. One of the games that that has laid the ground for Mappa Mundi. Now, I didn't find out about this until after I'd started work on the design, and then I really panicked because I was like, oh shit, someone's already done it. But thankfully, we're doing different things. But Monster Care Squad by Sandy Pug Games is you play vets. Like, you are essentially magic vets who go out and treat monsters who are suffering from this crystalline disease. And it's incredible. It's absolutely amazing. And a lot of people were coming up to us at Games Expo being like, oh my God, this is totally unique. And I was like, well, actually, it isn't unique. And I never say a game's unique because I haven't played every game. I don't know what every game is trying to do, but it is different.
Yeah.
And it's doing things. Ryutama and Monster Care Squad and games like A Quiet Year are the bedrock on which Mappa Mundi is built. And then we are trying to take things further and in different directions than those games are. But it's that thing, you're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? but on the combat thing, people used to ask me this about Margrave quite a lot. They were like, where are the Vikings? And I was like, you know where they are? They're in every other fucking game. Every other game has Vikings. If you want them, you can go and play another game. That's totally fine. What I am trying to do as a designer is allow for different experiences. Now, I am designing other games that have combat in them. One of them is incredibly violent in its kind of concept, but it's not the central purpose. Like, we can't lose perspective on the fact that D&D is a war game simulator. It's a tabletop war game simulator. That's what it started off as. And everyone's just like, over the years, it became the default. Fortunately or unfortunately, it became the default.
I would add in the 90s, it was dethroned.
It was dethroned in the 90s, and then as it should have been, but then it resurged and has become this monolithic thing. And then people come along and they're like, oh, well, I want to do like a social deduction game. Can someone recommend me a 5e supplement? And there's whole communities. There's a Facebook community that I love, which is titled "I am begging you to play another TTRPG." And it's incredible. And people come in there and they're like, I'm looking for a game that does social deduction. Can anyone recommend a 5e thing? And everyone's like, no, I can recommend these 15 games that are built to do social deduction. Yeah. So what Mappa Mundi is offering is that option. If like so many people were coming up to us and they're like, it's not that I don't like combat in other games, but I find it boring and dull, and I find it a problem that it's the first solution to every problem. If the only thing you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. If the only thing you've got is an axe, everything looks like a face to swing that axe into. Like, the Mappa Mundi is offering that different experience, and that it's rewarding you. It's a good USP for choosing to think about things differently.
Yeah, it's a good USP, I think, and it like you said, when you've got a deluge of combat orientated TTRPGs, having something different and sort of as outlandishly different as yours is, I think sort of moves you aside from the crowd and would get you a lot more interest.
Well, it's an accessibility thing as well. Like there's whole sections. I mean, I hate to get in like the kind of corporate speak about it, but I'm trying to come at it from we're providing a service for people that are being underserved. There's a whole section of the community that they play role-playing games with their friends because they want to hang out with their friends and they want to do storytelling. But every time it gets to combat, they're like, oh, God, I can't tell you the number of people who are like, oh, yeah, in my group, or someone else that you'd get a pair of people come up and they'd be like, oh, do you remember that time you tried to make friends with the dragon and it burned us all alive? And they were like, well, yeah, but it was so beautiful and so it was so rare and unique that I didn't want to kill it. I wanted to make friends with it. And I was like, welcome to Mappa Mundi. This is the game for you.
I remember playing some D&D games with my family during lockdown because we couldn't go out, we couldn't go anywhere. So I thought, right, okay, let's play some D&D. And the games, they approach combat completely differently. They counted a rust monster. I said, we're not going to kill it. It's just, it's just a rust monster. It's not being antagonistic. It's not
a threat to you. Yeah.
No, they kind of like, they got some brass coins and we just kind of led it out to the caves by giving it some brass copper coins to let it eat.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, you completed the mission.
Yeah.
Get rid of what, and went in a way I was not expecting at all. And
yeah. Well done. You didn't kill a sentient being.
Yeah, exactly. Like I at the D&D campaign that Pete used to be in before his character died. We're currently trying to retrieve his body at this moment in time, or the characters are trying to retrieve his body at the minute. But it's been going for like 3 years now. The most enjoyable parts nearly 4. Oh shit, yeah, we're on our 4th year. The most enjoyable parts are one where they've made their, because I used to, like you said, I would create loads and then they would just go off somewhere else and you'd lost a week's worth of your life to something they're never going to do. So I became very reactionary to the point where I'll do basic things and then let them tell the story, and I give them to the point where they can do their thing. And I found that a lot of the high points in it have been non-combat orientated and just storytelling things. Now, granted, you have I don't think I like the fact that the combat is there as something to break it up, because I don't want mine's not is more serious. It's quite serious and it's quite a lot of depth.
Yeah.
A lot of people have quite some emotional. There's characters have died. There's been some very emotional responses to things and stuff, and having that combat trope is good for threat, because people can die and you will lose. You know, a friend who you've been playing with for years, like Pete, when Pete's character died, it was very upsetting. You know, you've been playing with a guy for 3 years, and you know, it's not like you're not going to see him again, but he's not going to be there anymore. So
the relationship has fundamentally changed.
Yeah. But I understand it. I understand where you don't need combat to make a good TTRPG. And it was actually going to bring me on to. Have you ever heard of a game called I haven't played Alice is Missing?
Yeah, I haven't played it myself either, but I've read the book. And, this is one of the best-selling TTRPGs of all time, right? This is like an adamantium seller or whatever the highest level is on Drive-Thru RPG. Like, that game is like hyper-emotional storytelling.
Yeah.
And you don't need to do these things. What we wanted to do with Mappa is we wanted to present that kind of a similar scenario that you might get in games of D&D and Pathfinder, which is, here is a world in front of you full of danger and monsters. So you're still scratching that itch. It's a familiar space to be in, but it's entirely subverted. The core tenet is subverted. And I hadn't really thought about it this way, but Jeremy, who's one of my co-owners and the developer for the studio's developer and has done incredible work on Mappa Mundi, he said to me when we got back from the Games Expo, because he's obviously aware of all the other projects we've got coming on as well, and he's like, every game that you've put together has something that's familiar that you've then subverted. And I wasn't really aware that I was doing it. I've just got a pathological problem with authority, so I like twisting things around. But he was like, everything contains this hint of subversion. We should keep doing this. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. But Matt, it's interesting, just to return to something you said there. You said that in your campaign, combat is the thing that breaks up the campaign. It gives some breaks and some tension moments to it. And I don't doubt that for a second. One of my experience of D&D was that combat got in the way of everything. Sessions would just become, all right, we're in combat now. That's the rest of our game time is going to be this big combat.
It can clog things up.
Bog things down and clog them up. And that was, again, people at Expo, when we were introducing them to the game, they were like, oh, thank God. Because like we played, we get together once a month and we play for 5 or 6 hours, and 60-70% of that time is combat, and it's exhausting, and people become bored by it. You're waiting your turn. If there's loads of you, you're waiting for initiative to pass around. And if there's like 50 orcs on the other side of the battlefield, you're waiting for all of them to take their turns as well. And that's just the DM rolling dice behind a screen, and you're hoping you're not going to take too much damage before the healer's turn comes round. Like, it's exhausting. And I think this is where the ADHD bit comes in as well, is I can't do it anymore. I used to be able to do that when I was younger, but like, especially running games, like trying to manage all those moving pieces that are mechanical moving pieces is exhausting. And I think again, I'm trying to do accessibility is a very, very broad term and could sometimes be misapplied. But I think one of the things that drives my design work and that drives my kind of work leading the studio is that we are trying to make games for people with other interests than combat. And like I said, the other 2 games that are coming down the pipeline are full of, I say they're full of combat. One of them is full of combat, but it's also full of lots of other things and is a solo game. And one of them is, I can't give too much away about it right now because it's not ready for me to fully describe yet. But I'm calling it a place-based game. Like, there is combat in it, but it's intensely place-based. And you will. I mean, I really, really hope people are going to like it because I'm obsessing over it at the moment. But like, there is combat in it, but the point is not combat is not the driving force behind it, and it's been. I was terrified before we went to Expo that people would hate it. Well, actually, no, I wasn't terrified that people would hate it, because if they hate it, at least they're engaging with it. I was terrified that people would be indifferent.
Indifference, yeah.
Indifference is that for me and my ADHD brain, indifference is the worst possible thing.
Why don't they like me?
Exactly. Yeah. But the thing is, even if I don't even need them to like me, I just need them to notice that something exists.
Yeah.
And like, so last year, I met Pete at the Expo, and Pete came up and we had a chat and we spoke about Mappa Mundi. Last year, when I was at the Expo with Margrave, I'd have bitten my own fingers off to have someone come up to me and show some interest, and then follow up and say, we want you to come and talk about the game. I'd have bitten my own fingers off for someone to even mention the name of the game that I was making. This year, I followed through with the courage of my convictions. I was like, no, this is the game that Mappa wants to be. Take it out there and show it to people. And people just, the energy around the store was beautiful. The energy in our Discord now and on our Facebook community, and people are paying for the pre-release guide. Like, they're paying to download it, which is, I put it as pay what you want. I was like, because it shows up better in the algorithm than free does. And people are paying money for it. Like, and I'm just like, this is amazing. And hopefully people will pay money for the Kickstarter when that comes around. We're putting together a genuinely beautiful product. We're not going to be doing stretch goals, because stretch goals encourage overconsumption. You will get the best version of the book, the best version of the cards right off the bat. Like, I'm not going to hold those things to ransom. This is my project, and I want it to be the best possible version of it I can. And that will put our funding goal up, our funding target up a little bit. But I'm confident that people will recognize, one, the quality of the game that we've put out, two, the new things that it's bringing to the table, and three, the quality of the product that we're offering. And my plan is to do like social impact stretch goals as well. So the plan is that we will donate a certain percentage of all sales before, like, as long as we're selling things, we will donate a percentage of those sales. During the Kickstarter, we would after it finishes, we will donate a certain percentage of the sales to rewilding charities and animal protection charities, because they're in keeping with the game. And then, let's say we hit the 20 grand mark, and normally, I don't know, that would give you a bookmark ribbon or something. Instead of giving you things you don't actually need and encouraging overconsumption of resources, we will just up the percentage of the donations that we're giving, because there's more money available to give from. Like, that's the company that we are trying to be, and that's baked into who I am, and I'm trying to make sure that's therefore baked into the business that I'm running and the games that I'm designing as well.
It's hard not to get swept up by your enthusiasm and your passion for this.
People say that. I'm like a natural hype man.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the thing. It's all, I can't do artifice. I can't do pretending. This is all like, this is not me putting on, like, just, I was like, oh, well, I'm talking to podcasters, or I'm on a stream, let's hype myself up. So Matt, you were asking, how do I keep things in focus? I get excited about them.
Yeah.
That's how I keep my discipline. And that excitement this is it. There's plenty of things I find horrible and boring, but I don't go on podcasts to talk about the things I find horrible and boring, because they're horrible and boring. But getting to come and sit down and spend a few hours on an evening talking to you guys about something I love and I'm passionate about, and seeing you guys chime with what I'm saying, that's beautiful. Why wouldn't I want to do this? This is my dopamine hit right there. This will keep me going for a a good few days.
You've sold it to me.
I'm glad, Matt. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I appreciate
sold it to me.
it.
Yeah, God, I kind of want to keep. We try to keep these podcasts sort of like we've done long ones. We try and keep them sort of like at like an hour and 50. It's been an hour and a half. I feel like we could go on for another hour and a half easily talking about stuff. I feel we need to sort of kind of maybe start put a stop to it now, though.
Well, you know what? Let's put a stop to it now. You can have me back in a couple of months before we launch on Kickstarter.
Yes,
And
okay.
we'll do an hour and a half all over it.
Yeah, it sounds good to me, man. Like, I feel like there's loads of stuff. Like, there's loads of stuff you were talking about earlier. It's like, I want to talk to him about that. I want to talk about that. But we could literally go on all night about stuff. I feel like we could talk for a very long time, and we're trying to keep our podcast sort of kind of to a certain regimented sort of kind of time period. But yeah, man, it sounds amazing, absolutely amazing. It conceptually, just your passion, the whole thing. I really hope it goes well for you, and by all means, when's the crowdfunding start?
So the crowdfunding, the current plan is that we are going to crowdfund in the first week of February. Now, don't strictly hold me to that, because like I said, the book needs to be 100% or 99.99% done before we launch, because we are in, like, I have nightmares about being on, like, Kickstarter's going wrong. And so I would rather have the book as done as humanly possible before we go to crowdfunding, so that the day that it ends, the files can go off to the printers and we can just start the process going. So the plan is our deadline as a studio is to go live in February. You'll be able to get the full book. The full book is going to be 200 pages. It's 10 regions, 30 monsters, 50 creatures, all of the journey cards, all of the monster cards, all of that will be available. We're looking to do like pre-printed character sheets and maps, because one of the things that Mappa Mundi comes with wouldn't be a game called Mappa Mundi without providing players with blank maps to draw their own version of the world on. So we'll be doing map packs as add-ons. I'm kind of trying to work all that stuff out at the moment. But you can get the PDF version of this beauty. This is available to get right now. It's fully free. Well, it's pay what you want. If you want to pay for it, I'm not going to stop you, but it's free if you want it to be free. If you go to mappamundyrpg.com, yeah, I think it's .com. It might be .co.uk. Try them both. I'm certain it's .com. Go there, you'll find links to Drive-Thru RPG and itch.io. You can download them from there. Leave us a review if you've liked it. That's really helpful. It helps us get around the algorithm. The best thing people can do to support us is join our mailing list and join our Discord and Facebook communities. I do monthly updates via the mailing list, a kind of behind-the-scenes looks. I'm revealing our next email list update is the 1st of July. I received from Joel today the greatest monster artwork I have ever seen him do. It was my concept for a monster, and he just absolutely knocked it out of the park. So I'm starting to do layout tests, and so I'm going to reveal the monster and its stat block, its kind of behaviors and its background on the next email update. So that's a really good place to see that. Discord and Facebook communities are great places to be as well. Discord, we're starting to run Discord sessions on Discord, so people can get used to the game and then take it out into their own communities. And Facebook is always a good place to come and hang out as well. So yeah, that you can those are the best places to keep up with the game. And we'll be launching, fingers crossed, all goes to plan. We'll be launching in February and delivering. Again, fingers crossed, hopefully we'll be delivering the book before this time next year.
Oh, wow.
That's the plan.
If talking to you about this, it's sort of like this. There's some similar. Have you Mage Hand Press? We've had them on. They've been on the podcast. They've got a book coming out called the Book of Extinction, and it's basically a book about it. It's about actual creatures that existed and their extinction. It's an RPG. It's got similar sort of kind of vibes and stuff.
I haven't heard of it, but I'll have to go and check.
Yeah,
that
man,
out.
I get that. Right, so it just he was on here. He's similar to you, very passionate and stuff. And I was like, all right, man, you sold me. I'll back that.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad.
So if you come back when you come back on when you're crowdfunding and you show that much zeal next time, then you probably have an automatic backer, because I'm a sucker for passion.
Oh, that would be absolutely beautiful. I really appreciate you having me on, though, guys. I know I've extended your time out, but I really appreciate
no, not at all. Like
I
said, we've had long ones and stuff before. It's just we're trying to sort of keep it at a regimented sort of kind of pace and stuff. But like you have podcasts sometimes where you'll have guests. You're like yes, no, and it's really hard to get stuff out of them, and it can get quite uncomfortable sometimes. But obviously not here. It's just like when you can literally just sort of you can literally just put 50p in him and he just sort of goes and it's just like amazing.
Like, mate, I don't even need the 50p. Just look at me and I'm off.
Okay. I feel like we usually do a thing at the end of our podcast. It's sort of a it's like a 20 question sort of thing, but it's basically by all means, depending on your nerd credentials, which I think are probably pretty high,
probably
you basically we'll each choose a franchise. It could be like Star Wars, Marvel, Star Trek or something, and you choose a character within that franchise, and the others have to guess who that character is, and we got 60 seconds. So you would think of a franchise, you tell us what the franchise is. Obviously, both of us have to have some sort of knowledge of that franchise, or it's just going to be a very hard game for us. And then you choose a character. We have to guess who that character is by asking you questions. So I'm not sure. Myself and Pete can give you an example. I'm not sure. Pete, do you have anything?
I do. I've been watching Stargate with my family, so I'm going to suggest the Stargate.
My Stargate knowledge is
Stargate knowledge is terrible.
Yeah, mine's pretty terrible.
We'll
Sorry. Do something easy that we'll both know. You know my things. If it's Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, Star Trek, Marvel, DC.
Okay, then Star Wars then.
Okay, Star Wars.
Okay.
Bear with me a minute. Let me get the stopwatch going. Okay, so Star Wars, 60 seconds, go. Okay, original trilogy?
No.
Prequel trilogy?
No.
Sequel trilogy?
No.
Ooh.
Extended universe?
No.
Oh, Pete, come on, man. They
can't be anything else.
Yeah. Are they in one of the live action TV series?
No.
Are they Pete, why do you do this? You're the worst. Yeah, that one of those. Right, okay. Are they what? Why? Is it one of the cartoons?
No,
it's in
one of the films. It's one of the films, but it's not in the trilogies.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Is it oh Christ.
Is it one of the anthologies? So is it Solo?
Yes, it's in Solo.
It's in Solo.
Okay.
Okay, right. Okay. All right. Okay. We're gonna.
He was technically right there. That's the best kind.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Pete. I
Vindicated.
apologize.
As you should.
All right. So, it's in Solo. Are they human?
No.
Are they a robot?
Yes.
A droid?
Yes.
Okay. I only saw Solo once, and it was like right when it first came out, so I can't remember what the droids were.
Droid in Solo.
Wasn't it voiced? Wasn't the droid voiced by Phoebe Waller-Bridge?
Yep.
Is it that droid?
Yep.
There we go. I don't know the droid's name, but I know the voice actor. I think that counts.
Okay, yeah. I saw Solo once. Thought it was really. I thought it was really good, and thought it was like underappreciated, but. Yeah, I didn't recognize the name, but okay. All right, Pete, apologies. It wasn't as obscure as you usually go. Okay. All right.
You.
I thought he was going for some really obscure, like, Dark Horse
comics.
God,
it's going to be like, one of the comics or one of, like, the novelizations or something.
I was like, I don't know.
I'll do that next time.
Okay, have you got anything, or do you want me to go?
What have I got? All right, so I've got one. I've got a character that I discovered relatively recently. Now, it's in Marvel, and I will say now, I'm not really a big Marvel guy, but I think I know enough about the character to know which film they were in and what comic series they came from. So okay. I've got one.
Okay, cool. All right, so Marvel, 60 seconds, go. So they're in a film.
Yes.
Are they in their own self-titled film?
No.
Are they in phase 1?
No.
Phase 2?
I don't know the definitions of the phases, but it's more recent than old.
Are they in? Are they a part of the Avengers?
No.
Are they good?
No. Well, that depends on your perspective, but by Marvel standards, no.
Okay. And
are
do they have
human?
Yeah, are they human?
Yes, humanoid at least.
Do they have do they have powers?
They do have powers, yeah.
Okay.
Are they alien? Are they alien humanoids, or are they human humanoids?
They are not from Earth.
Right. Okay.
Are they in the Guardians of the Galaxy?
They are, as in, are they a member of Guardians?
Are they a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
No, they are not.
But they are in the Guardian of the Galaxy films?
No.
Ooh, okay.
Are they in the Thor films?
They are in one of the Thor films, yeah.
Right, okay.
So that's
are they Asgardian?
No, they are not Asgardian.
Okay, so that's the 60 seconds. So we've got one more question each.
Yeah.
So we know they're in the Thor film. They're not Asgardian. They're humanoid. They have powers.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be Loki. It's not going to be Loki, is it? Because he's not technically Asgardian.
It's not Loki.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So in one of the films,
were they played by Carl Urban?
No, they were not played by Carl Urban.
Okay.
He's Asgardian. He's an Asgardian.
Yeah.
The guy. He's an Asgardian, so he can't be. So it's not. He's not Asgardian. I'm trying to think.
Of course, yeah.
Not in one of the films.
Were they in Love and Thunder?
They were in Love and Thunder.
Oh, I know who it is. It's Gore.
Or the God Butcher. Yeah.
Do you know what, man? That film upset me because Gore as a character is it was just wasted. Like the dark edge that they could have gone.
I would have said, I don't know, man. I think Christian Bale has got back problems from carrying that film for everyone else in it.
Oh, yeah, it was just like... but the annoying thing about it was that you had... they were just sort of putting in gags for gag's sake, and it completely took the edge off that whole thing. And
I said, I'm not really a Marvel fan. Like, I find the films... I don't want to have to watch 11 films to watch one film. Like, I really enjoyed the first Black Panther film. I loved it. Really liked it. I thought I love Gore the God Butcher as a character. So I watched Blood and Thunder. But like by and large, I kind of give those films a wide berth.
Yeah, like as a character.
Guardians, the first two Guardians of the Galaxy, I enjoyed those as well.
The film was pretty good as well.
Yeah, they're all good, but like that one, the third one, I thought you quite liked.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
yet.
it's all about animal cruelty and sort of testing on animals and things like that. Yeah. So it
sounds like it's right up my street.
There's a lot of sort of like there's a very poignant moment in it. I was like, oh, there's dust in my eyes. I was like, but yeah, the Gore the God Butcher, I thought was an amazing character that was. His arc was somewhat sort of blunted by...
blunted was exactly the word I was going to
blunted,
use.
And it was just like, that upset me slightly. So I didn't really rate it that much. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't sort of good. Okay, mine. Oh, where do I do my go-to? Do I do my go-to? What's your Lord of the Rings knowledge like?
Very, very well. Very good to very good, I would say.
Okay, cool. We'll do Lord of the Rings.
Are we doing films or are we doing books?
Oh, could be both.
Oh no.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know how what's if I went deep Silmarillion deep, are you gonna?
Oh, it's been a long time since I've read the Silmarillion.
No, I'll do one. I've probably done before on podcast. All right, let's go for. Okay, he's. Ooh. Would I go for? Okay, it's somewhat obscure, but I hope you should get it. Okay, Right. So Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
60 seconds. Go.
Books or films?
He's in both.
He's in both. Okay.
Are they human?
Yes.
Are they from like the western part of the kind of known Middle Earth, or the eastern part of known Middle Earth? West. Shire West?
Yes.
Are they affiliated with Sauron?
No.
They're in the Shire, but they're a human, not a hobbit.
They are not. Well, they're Hobbit. I'll say they're Hobbit.
Oh, is it Tom Bombadil? Oh, it can't be Tom Bombadil.
It's not.
He's not in the film.
No, he's not in the film.
Okay.
So he might be. He might be in the new Silmarillion.
Yeah,
he might be in the new Lord of the Rings series on Amazon.
So is he a hobbit?
He is a Hobbit. Yes.
He is a hobbit.
Is it male?
He is male. Yes.
Okay.
Is it old Gaffer Gamgee?
No, that's a good one, but no, it's not him.
Are they in The Hobbit?
Is he name dropped in? I don't think so.
So is it in the
He's in the first book. He's in
Fellowship of the Ring.
The Fellowship of the Rings. Yeah.
Is he concerned with acquiring lots of silver cutlery?
No, he is not.
Okay.
He is not a sackful.
So obviously, it's in the party at in the Shire.
No, he is not.
He's not at the party.
Right. Oh.
He I'll give you a clue. Your 60 seconds are up.
Okay.
I'll give you a clue. He has a run-in with with Merry and Pippin.
Oh, is it Farmer Maggot?
It is Farmer Maggot. He made a Farmer Maggot's crop.
Yeah.
I thought he was human.
He's not.
Farmer Maggot's a hobbit. As far as I'm aware.
Yeah, he's a hobbit.
He's solidly in the Shire.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. You beat up Farmer Maggot's crop again. Nice. All right. Cool. Right. So yeah, man, amazing. Really appreciate your time. Please come back on again. I'm sure we have a million things we can talk about. Obviously, when you're when a Mappa Mundi comes out for crowdfunding, please let us know. If you just want to come back on for a bit of banter, then by all means.
I'm here for it. Yeah, I'm here for it.
Let us know. But for tonight, I've been Matt Geary. With me has been Peter Allison.
Good night, everyone.
And George Bickers from Three Seals Studios. Bye, everybody.